Last month, Joon Han provided some incredible information in November's VOE, but part 2 of my interview with Joon may just literally make your 2019. So you might want to take some notes with the amazing information that Joon shares with us. Here's Joon. You said, as I understand, that there are certain budgets within companies that often we as speakers don't think about or tap.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Right. So I'll tell you, these are these happy accidents in life when you just say yes to relationships and whatnot. So I'm sitting on this board, and there's all these sponsors from Chase, Bank, AT&T, Verizon, and again, the Verizon woman, she's in charge of their foundations. That's why she's on this board. What's a Verizon Foundation? Well, I mean, every Fortune 500 company is trying to get rid of some tax burden, right? And so they have these foundations that are, for all intents and purposes, unlimited piles of money. Now, they'll never go on record saying this, but a Fortune 500 company would prefer to use its foundation money to accomplish marketing goals.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, it's a business. It makes business sense.
Absolutely.
You do that. And what they're under the gun for is the IRS is like, listen, we know what you're doing, but at least just spend the money. And so every year, these foundations need to spend not just like $1 or $2 million, like hundreds of $millions a year. But the problem is, most people asking for money is like the local schools asking for like $300 or $5,000 for the ballet or something like that. That doesn't move the needle for them. I mean, in a cynical view, I'll tell you, I'm a cynical guy. I'm Gen X. There's like they're going to do something bad one day, and they're going to need a picture that says, preferably women holding up a giant check with lots of numbers behind it, with like different diverse-looking kids, right? Like if that check says $5,000, that doesn't really protect you from whatever you just did, right? Now, this is my cynical take on what they're doing. Now, they'll tell you they all have a mission. Like in San Diego, Qualcomm's a big one, and they really go on education STEM because that's kind of their thing, right? And Verizon has some different things, and like, for instance, Kaiser Permanente is health-related, right? So anyway, she's with the Verizon Foundation, so I'm realizing there's a huge chunk of money. And she said, she listened to my podcast, and this is the thing. She came back to me a week later through email. She's like, Joon, I watched all of your episodes. And I haven't watched all my episodes, right? But that's one of the beauties of podcasting is that, and now it's more of a catchphrase because of Netflix, the bingeability or binging, right?
Absolutely.
So she did that 6 years ago. She saw everything. She's like, Joon, we want to support these nonprofit organizations, but these conferences don't really have budget to get like a great speaker. So can our foundation pay you to speak at these conferences? So just to make this clear, Verizon's already sponsoring this conference.
Right.
And they're like a title sponsor or whatever. But they would like to say Verizon specifically sponsoring this keynote speech. And then that's me.
Right.
Right. So it's coming from their foundation money, which is technically they're accomplishing marketing goals.
Right.
But it's coming out of their foundation thing. Right. And so again, I say it's almost a limitless pile of money because they need to spend $100 million a year because they're putting in close to that every year. Right. And then through that, I learned, so this is interesting. I never got a check from Verizon in 3 years. I did probably eight speaking engagements, a year, and I never got a check from them. I got a check from their foundation, or there's another pool of money called supplier diversity money. So every Fortune 500 company, anyone basically, even government entities that get money from the federal government, are required to, like there's a quota. The government would like them to say 20% of their vendors, like T-shirts, landscaping, painting, IT services, HR training, that kind of stuff. 20% of that needs to go to small businesses.
Right.
Right. Now, of that 20%, this is the order the government would prefer that money go. They would prefer that it would go to the disabled veteran first. If you're a disabled veteran, which most people, unless you're a triathlete, when you go through boot camp, you end up on the other end being fairly, disabled in one category technically. So the government would prefer that 20%. They would prefer 100% of that 20% would go to disabled veterans. Less than 1% currently goes to disabled veterans. Disabled veterans is the first thing. Native Americans are second one. Then ethnic minority, like women. Then ethnic minority. But then just small business, period.
Okay.
Right? So I was getting checks from the foundation. And then I was getting checks from a marketing company in Seattle, which I had never been a part of.
Right.
But what it was is Verizon had a diversity contract with that marketing company.
I see.
And the more money they use to that marketing company, it counts towards their supplier diversity, the percentage that they're using, right? So oftentimes what Fortune 500 companies do is they'll find, say you are an HR person, and they'll say, Chuck, here's the thing. Right now you offer like productivity stuff. We would love to grow your contract. Do you happen to offer like leadership training? And if you say no, they would say, it would really be great if you offered leadership training because you've already gone through our certification.
Right.
You already count towards our quota.
Right.
We'd love to grow our pie with you.
Right.
If you would add that. So we have a client that started out just doing like custom software, like app kind of stuff. And now they do IT, web development. They do all these other services that this guy, when he started his company, never thought he would be in the business of doing.
Right.
But now they're doing like $20 million a year just off of one Fortune 500 company that said, hey, could you do this too?
Right.
We love you. Could you do this? And he's like, Joon, what do? Hire someone that does that, man, because they're saying you're already in the pipeline. So if you work the Fortune 500, that approval process is a lot more expedited than if you went to like every community college district, every city entity. They all have the same contracting requirements.
Gotcha.
20% small business, whatnot. But as you can imagine, when you go through a government or military entity, it's a little more convoluted.
Absolutely.
Right? Whereas Fortune 500, they can fast track because the government can't necessarily tell them what their process is.
Right.
Right. And you know how I learned most of this? I learned it from my Verizon contact, and then I just interviewed people like, at Sony or Qualcomm. Hey, can we go out to lunch? You're the supplier diversity officer. Can you tell me what contract you're looking for? And I remember walking in just as like a consultant, right? Walking in and going, there's just 2 unlimited chunks of money that no one knows about. And that's actually the problem is the government would like people to know more about this to win that 20%. So there you can look up the report card, and almost every company is not hitting that 20%.
Wow.
It's sad because it's a great legislation that's supposed to be just and putting small businesses first, but
Joon, I have this mindset right now that people that are listening to this,
right,
or potentially watching it, but especially those listening to it, are
yeah.
like wheels spinning, thinking, how do I do this?
Right.
And I don't know that we have the time to get into that, peeling that.
And there's a whole like nonprofit marketing strategy as well,
But awesomeguest.com is your website,
Yep.
and I am sure that you would be delighted to talk with someone and see where kind of that goes, because you've given us 2 things that are very concrete that as people who deliver content, we need to know and we need to be able to apply.
Absolutely.
Joon, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
It's been great having you as a guest on VOE.
Thank you.